Scott, I'm going to start off with the clip from Melanie Joly just a little earlier this afternoon with respect to Stellantis deciding to leave Brampton, Ontario and head to the U.S.
Let me be clear on Stellantis. I'm extremely disappointed about this decision, and not only am I disappointed, it's completely unacceptable. So we will fight for these jobs. We will fight for the jobs at Brampton. We'll fight for the jobs that were committed by Stellantis, and we will fight for our auto sector. The company has commitments under different types of agreements with the government, including the fact that we provided support for the retooling of the very Brampton facility that right now is sitting idle. So we will make sure that we push the company and we hold them to account.
So, by the way, she's kind of talking about the fact that the government, if there is no deal reached here, Scott, would consider suing. And I wonder how much of this sort of, talk about what the government can do or will do is actually going to come to fruition.
My guess would be some of it. I think Stellantis is not going to back down. It may try to talk its way out of it by saying, well, we'll shift some stuff around and we'll do some stuff here or there and everywhere. But look, I think this is the consequence of Donald Trump's White House. And, we almost immediately have started to kind of normalize this guy's rhetoric and conduct, and we kind of shrug our shoulders and we live our lives day to day. But this is what he has told us he wants to do. He stood in the White House a week ago with Mark Carney and said, I don't want you to make any cars in Canada. I don't want that to happen. Now, that neglects the fact that for 60 years, we haven't had cars made in Canada or the United States. We've had an integrated North American auto sector. It is one big sector, but Trump can't see it that way. It has to be, you must lose in order for me to win.
Right.
And most importantly, Trump has demonstrated time and again that he will use the force of his office, which is the most powerful on earth, to punish and harm the economic interests of companies that don't do what he demands, whether what he demands is stupid or not. And so Stellantis is going to move, and others will also. And if people think I sound hysterical or like a henny penny, I'm sorry, but this is what we face. So yeah, we'll squeeze some cash out of these guys by suing them because they're going to be in breach of contract. But a bunch of these companies are going to, where and when they can, relocate to be inside the United States, not because it makes economic sense, not because it will make cars cheaper, it'll make cars more expensive, not because it will make their business stronger, it will make their business weaker, but because they are afraid of the consequence of defying Donald Trump, because he will bring both barrels of the U.S. administration right at them. That's what we're facing. And so the auto sector feels like an endangered species all of a sudden in Canada.
I wonder, though, you say it's not about economics. What are they investing $13 billion to open up in Illinois? But at some point, it is about economics in a sense, Scott, because if, the president decided to impose, new rules, new tariffs against the company specifically, it wouldn't make sense, right? They would have to be in the U.S.
Right. I mean, it doesn't make economic sense on the face of it to say, let's take a system that works and that is structured and allows them to have access to lower cost labor, allows them to have access to high trained talent, lets them have access to a brand new plant and facility in Brampton, as an example. It doesn't make sense to blow all that up. But as you say, if the alternative is that the most powerful man in the Western world decides that he wants to extract economic rent from your ass, then you're going to do it. You're going to spend $13 billion to rebuild the kind of plant that you've already got in Brampton. Okay. It makes no sense, but this is the world in which we live because everyone is either in agreement or in fear of Donald Trump.
As an aside, I want to get your take on what we heard Doug Ford say earlier on when he kind of, take another chunk off Donald Trump again and suggesting, this is enough. We're getting taken, advantage of. We need to do something. We need to push back, fight back. What do you take that to mean?
I don't know. I mean, that's the luxury you have if you're a premier and you don't have to actually negotiate directly with the president of the United States. And who knows, maybe the prime minister actually likes having Doug Ford say that because then he can go into meetings with U.S. officials and say, or Dominic LeBlanc, who's our point man down there, can say, listen, guys, like, we got politics too. I got the Premier of Ontario breathing down our throat here, except I don't really think that Howard Lutnick or Donald Trump give a damn. So I'm not sure what Ford is. I mean, Ford is largely just trying to reflect the frustration of his public. He wants to demonstrate that he's on their side and he feels their anger as well. But we got to stand up. We got to do something. All right, well, lead on, McDuff. Do what?
Yeah.
So, this is the problem we have, is that if you're dealing with a president who is unresponsive to economic realities, who is willing to put things at risk, and will harm those who stand in his way, he's got all the leverage, man. It's really hard to say no to this guy. So I think in large part, those unprotected industries are in a really vulnerable place, like farming, like timber, like auto, and the 85% of the access to the U.S. that we get by virtue of CUSMA is increasingly what we're trying to cling on to. Like, a win is now starting to look like we cling on to the market access that CUSMA or the son of CUSMA gives us.
Yeah, a win is suddenly not a loss. Okay. Let me ask about the situation in India. We were speaking yesterday, actually. First of all, of course, Anita Anand trying to work out a deal with China, now in India trying to work out a deal there. And there's some significance, I guess, and we heard this from one of our people yesterday, on the fact that a minister is meeting with the president of the country as opposed to our prime minister having to meet. What do you make of that?
They're greasing the skids. This isn't unusual. It makes perfect sense. You don't want the prime minister. I mean, we have to do what we have to do because Trump has the leverage. So when it comes to meeting with Trump or perhaps Xi in China, then you have to do what you have to do. But in this case, you want your ministers to be there, to be developing and furthering the dialogue to try to reach some kind of new agreement. And then the prime minister emerges on the scene with their leader to seal it.
Right.
So that all makes perfect sense. That conforms with my experience in government. That's how you would rationally run things. The thing that I think is interesting is, 3 years ago, China was holding two of our diplomats as prisoners, effectively political prisoners, and everything in our relationship had ground to a halt. Just last year, we're reacting to the reality that that the Indian Prime Minister personally authorized a hit squad to take out someone who held Canadian citizenship on Canadian soil, to murder someone. But we are forced to deal with these countries. Why? They have large markets. And Donald Trump, by virtue of saying, I'm going to start increasingly deny you access to the U.S. market, is forcing us to look at alternatives. And there's no point looking at just a tiny like Costa Rica and Luxembourg. We got to go where the people are. We got to go where the markets are. That's China and that's India. And so the perversity, again, of Trump's policy, his big global threat is China. And he's pushing Canada, the UK, the EU. He's pushing us all to increase our relationship and our reliance on the Chinas and the Indias of the world because he's denying us that relationship. It is a geopolitical disaster. China couldn't have hoped for a better president than Trump.
I don't want to end here. I got like 30 seconds left on. I did want to point out, because I'm imagining you were doing this back in 1995. We're at the 30th anniversary, of course, of the referendum here. We're finding out today Jean Chrétien told his ministers to, quote, keep their cool. Some comments today that, it's interesting 30 years later to look back, hindsight's worth, I guess in this case, 2020. What do you remember from that? And what do you make of this, the Jean Chrétien revelation here?
I remember so much. I was there. I was working for Paul Martin at the time, and it was an insanely tense period because, in the words of John Ray, who was, Chrétien's senior advisor, most trusted advisor all those years, Johnny Ray says to me, one man. I remember this conversation very clearly. He says, one man. We had this damn thing locked up, and then Lucien Bouchard bursts onto the scene. He resets the play, and suddenly a referendum that looked like it had no hope of succeeding became a game of fractions on the actual voting day. And that's what Bouchard did. Of course, Chrétien was saying to his cabinet, just keep your calm. He was also telling them to keep their mouths shut.
Right.
He, at that point, was very worried that the thing could be lost and didn't want ministers wandering into a landmine out of desperation. And what was even more remarkable was the day after the result. Chrétien, always Mr. Tough Guy, the petit gars, he broke down in tears at the National Caucus. That's my clearest memory. He was so shaken by the result, and he had acknowledged that he had contemplated whether, as a Quebec member of Parliament, he would have felt obligated to resign as Prime Minister had the referendum been lost. I don't think he would have, but I think that's how dramatic, how significant this moment was.
Significant indeed. Hard to believe it's 30 years ago. I still remember where I was looking at that crowd gathering in front of, downtown in Montreal.
I was there. Yeah. I drove down from Ottawa for it. I remember it well. Chade holding up the passport was a stirring moment.
Crazy, crazy day. Scott Reid. Scott, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.